Next, let's discuss the tissue nematodes. So all of the tissue nematodes, these all spread through the bite of an arthropod. And these nematodes belong to the family Filariaceae, so we often call these diseases filariasis. All of these diseases usually result in damage to the lymphatic system or lymphatic organs or other organs such as the eye. And the main signs and symptoms are usually due to allergic reactions. The body is responding as if these are an allergen. Our first tissue nematode is Woocher Area, also known as elephantitis. Now, this disease is endemic to the Pacific Islands and Africa, and it spreads very specifically through the bite of a mosquito. So what happens is, once bitten, the worm travels to the lymphatic vessels where it matures, and specifically it targets the lower extremities and the lymph nodes in the groin region. From there, the adult males and the offspring can enter the blood vessel. The most severe thing that can happen is some fibrous tissue can actually plug the lymphatic system, resulting in a swelling in the lower extremities and in the groin region. And also the skin can become covered in this kind of thick, scaly skin. Our next tissue nematode causes a disease called river blindness. River blindness is spread by these black flies, and these black flies breed in freshwater rivers and streams. So this is mostly found in Africa, in Central or South America. So what happens is the larvae are transmitted by these black flies. The black flies bite the human. The larvae will mature into the human skin and subcutaneous tissue. And what you might see, because of this maturing of the larvae, you might see a dark rash form. From there, a lot of times the larvae will migrate to the eye, and it leads to blindness, which gives it this name, river blindness. River because the black fly is found in rivers, and then blindness because it's one of the major signs. There's no vaccine for this disease, and the only way to control it is to really try to avoid contact with these black flies. Another similar disease called Aloa. This is an African eye worm, and this is spread by bites of a small fly. And very similarly, it can lead to blindness and rash in the skin. The final intestinal nematode is the Guinea worm. The Guinea worm is found in India, Middle East, and Central Africa. This used to be one of the most prevalent diseases in the world. There was 3.5 million cases of it in 1986. Then the Carter Foundation, founded by Jimmy Carter, coupled with the World Health Organization, they had this major eradication effort, and now we basically don't see very much of this at all anymore. There was only 24 cases of it in 2015, so you can see this is a huge decline. So how this disease works is that people would be bathing in public water. Now there's an intermediate host, it's a small crustacean. And what happens is when someone drinks this water, they are drinking some of this crustacean, and then the larvae can penetrate into the intestine. They can actually grow to be very, very long. And what happens when the person goes back into water again is that the larvae try to leave the body through the skin, usually through the leg. And you have to try to pull the worm out. And one of the ways they do this is they kind of wrap the worm around a wooden stick to try to pull it out from the leg. So back when this was very prevalent, people would experience allergies, nausea, vomiting, hives. Luckily, we don't see very much of this anymore. Our next group of helminths are the Nematodes, also known as the Flukes. And as you can see from this picture, Flukes are types of flatworms, and they do have some of these primitive organ systems. Now, the most prevalent fluke by far is blood flukes, also known as schistosomes. So Schistosomiasis is actually the second most prevalent disease in the tropical countries. So other than malaria, this is the most common disease we find in tropical countries. The main intermediate host of this is a type of freshwater snail. And so this snail lives in freshwater lakes and streams. And what happens is when somebody goes swimming or bathing in the water and they come in contact with the snail, the mature larvae can actually penetrate the human skin. They actually can get in through intact skin, and from there the larvae can attack the intestines and the bladder, and also they will eventually mature in the liver. Similar to these blood flukes, there's also liver flukes, Clonorchus and Fascicola. They're very similar to the last one in that they do cycle between snails, fish, and mammals. Here's a picture of the liver fluke. Our final group of helminths are the Sestoes or the tapeworms. Now there's a couple important features on the tapeworm. You can see these are also flat worms and they have these kind of ribbon-like structure. Now each one of these little segments you see here is a proglottid, and mature proglottids actually could have both male and female sex organs, so each one of these, if they break off, can mature to form a whole new tapeworm. Then at the top of the tapeworm, you see the head called the scolex, and it can have suckers or it could have hooks that it uses to latch onto the intestine. Now, tapeworms lack their own digestive system, so they rely on sucking up already digested nutrients from their host. There's two main types of tapeworms. The beef tapeworm. In the beef tapeworm, cattle are actually the intermediate host and humans are the definitive host. So humans can get this obviously from ingesting the eggs from the cattle. Now this infection is actually the most benign of all the tapeworms. However, the adult tapeworm can adhere to the human intestinal mucosa. It can grow up to 10 meters long, extraordinarily long. Most people are actually asymptomatic, but they might experience weight loss or malnutrition because the tapeworm is taking up their nutrients. The more severe type of tapeworm is the pork tapeworm, obviously from eating larvae that's contaminated in undercooked pork. Now, this worm will attach to intestinal mucosa via its hooks or its suckers. But then what can happen is the larvae of the tapeworm can travel to other parts of the body, such as to muscles. Again, eggs will usually be passed in feces. The person may feel abdominal pain and nausea. The most severe thing that can happen is if the larvae travel to other parts of the body, like to the brain or the heart. This can actually be serious or even fatal.